order and order that registration be closed. We now will have the presentation of colors by American Legion Post 64. As they present the colors, all those who have served or are currently in the military, please stand as well. Thank you. Please sing along with our national anthem. Thank you. Have a seat, and those who have served or are currently serving in the military, please stand and be recognized. We thank you for your service. We welcome you to this meeting, and glad that we have as big a turnout as we do. Next year it'd be nice to bring your neighbors and relatives and have as many members here as we possibly could have. And just a reminder, the absentee ballots you received in the mail can only be counted if they were returned to the office before the close of business today. The only ballots that will be collected and counted today are those colored meeting day ballots. You must be present the entire meeting to be eligible for the $10 energy credit, as well as the chicken dinner voucher. Registration is now closed for that purpose of exchanging a mail-in ballot for a meeting day ballot. And what that means is now we'll start counting ballots up on stage. Secretary?
Good morning. At this time, there are 101 members registered at the Jump River Electric Co-op 81st Annual Meeting. This is a sufficient number to constitute a quorum and hold an official meeting of the membership.
Thank you, Joe. Now I'll introduce guests from other organizations and cooperatives. David Engelmeyer from Chippewa Valley Electric, would you guys please stand? Clyde Shipman from Chippewa Valley Electric. Mary Erickson from WEC News. Nate Bennington from Clifton Larson Allen. David Wozniak from Clifton Larson Allen. Linda Powers from River Valley Architects. Barb Nick from Darrell & Power. and Chuck Zenner from Taylor Electric Cooperative. Thank you all for coming. Niles Berman will act as our parliamentarian today. Niles is a partner of Wheeler Van Sickle Law Firm in Madison. He's represented many co-ops in Wisconsin for 45 years and has been with us and helped us on or off for about 10 different annual meetings in recent years. Niles?
Thank you, Jerry. Good morning. So we'll turn now to some of the business items for the meeting this morning. We'll start with the rules of the meeting. It does not require action. The bylaws authorize and charge your Rules and Resolutions Committee with responsibility for reviewing the proposed meeting rules and adopting them well prior to the annual meeting. So you'll see the annual meeting rules in the annual report at page 16A. Just to remind you of a couple of the important points in those rules. Speakers must be recognized by the chair before speaking, and only members will be recognized by the chair. And please give your name and the area where you live when you want to be recognized. Please limit comments to 3 minutes and rebuttal to 2 minutes. Comments will be in order during old and new business parts of the meeting and after the presidents, the managers, and financial reports have been given. So that's basically it. Are there any questions about those meeting rules? If not, the next item of business is the reading of the notice and affidavit of mailing of this meeting. The notice is published on the inside cover of the annual report. I hope you've all had a chance to read that. I also have an affidavit from the staff at the Wisconsin Electric Cooperative Association that certifies that the notice has been mailed to all of the members on March 29th, which fits within the not less than 7-day and not more than 30-day window required by our bylaws for giving notice to the membership. I'm very happy. Lawyers like having microphones in hand and talking to groups of people. I'm very happy to read the notice and the affidavit of mailing as the bylaws provide. I would prefer to ask you to please waive the reading and just allow us to put those documents on file. If there's no objection, we will do that. Is there any objection? I see none. Thank you. And with that, Jerry, did you want to ask for approval of the minutes of last year's meeting, or do you want me to? Okay. So also in the annual report, you'll find the minutes of last year's annual meeth. They appear on the inside of the back cover of the annual report. Let me ask you first of all if there are any additions or corrections to the minutes as they have been printed. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, I would ask for a motion, please, for approval of the minutes as printed. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Do I see a second? I have a second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the annual meeting minutes from 2018 as published. All in favor of that resolution, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, no. And that motion carries. Jerry, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Niles. I need to announce the appointment of election inspectors who are up on the stage. Jerry Geisler, Arian Knops, Jackson Reeder, Florence Solanke, and Kathy Tatera. And we thank them for their volunteerism today. I also need to introduce the directors, and if you can stand or raise your hand as I do. Jane Wright from District 1 in Sheldon, Myron Brooks from District 2 in Gilman, Joe Lawrence from District 3 at Sheldon, myself from District 4, Bill Van Dorn from District 5 at Ladysmith, Jack Sermon from District 6 in Hayward, Lori Taguma from District 7 in Hayward, Wally Crook from District 8 in Hayward, and Sandy Shara from District 9 in Hayward. We appreciate the time that they spend helping your cooperative.
The next item of business is the election of directors. The bylaws provide for a board of 9 members, each serving 3-year terms, and that means that 3 directors are elected at each meeting. This year, the directors serving in districts 2, 7, and 8 are up for election, and the nominees are by petition. The nominees in the 3 districts are in District 2, Myron Brooks. In District 7, we have a contested race, Jason Weaver and Lori Taguma. And in District 8, Wally Crook. So it's been the practice to allow each of the candidates to speak briefly to you to supplement the information that you'll find in the annual report. And we'll do them in order. District 2, Myron, do you want to come forward and say a few words? And the biographies for the candidates appear on pages 16 and 16A of your annual reports. In District 2, the incumbent, Myron Brooks, is the only nominee, and his bio is on page 16. Myron?
Welcome everyone to our annual meeting. My name is Myron Brooks. I am the current director of District 2 for Jump River Electric. I have been a member of Jump River Electric for over 45 years. I live in the town of Jump River where I operate a beef farm. I'm also town chairman of the town of Jump River and serve as a supervisor for the Taylor County Board. I'm also a charter member of the Jump River Lions Club, and I'm actually the only one left alive that's a charter member. Getting kind of worried about that. 2.5 years ago, the membership demanded changes. The board responded. District 5 was restored. Members in District 5 are now represented again. A different manager was hired and a new attorney was brought on. We are now working on a solution to the LCO easement problem, and it may soon be resolved. With members' approval, we are planning a new headquarters in Ladysmith. This would be very important to the future of our co-op. I would like to thank the members who attended the meeting today, and I thank all those who supported me in this election. I'll do my best to provide safe, reliable, and affordable energy to all our members. Thank you.
Thank you, Myron. In District 7, there are 2 candidates, and I'd ask you both to come forward. We'll do these in the order in the magazine. Jason Weaver, if you'd come forward, and Lori Taguma. Lori, if you would come forward also, and we'll let Jason speak first. And again, the bios are on page 16 of your annual report. Jason?
Good morning, and thank you all for attending. I'd like to take time to thank the employees of Jump River Electric also. I think they do a wonderful job. During Packer games, power doesn't go out for me, so I really appreciate that. I want to thank the school district of Ladysmith for letting us use their facilities. I think that's amazing. And I'd like to, again, acknowledge our military veterans, our police, fire, and EMT. Much like our Jump River Electric employees, your service is recognized and appreciated. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be up here before you and to be running for this board. I have experience in utilities. That has been my job for the past 20 years, working in the city of Milwaukee. I recently moved back to the Hayward area in 2012 to raise my children. I didn't want them to grow up in the city. Wanted to be in the country where they could enjoy the amenities that I grew up with, and I'm very thankful for that opportunity to have them grown in the area that I grew up with. I'm thankful for the Jump River Electric Company because cooperative, because we have a say in what goes on, and as you know, the past 2 years it was very controversial, and everybody got together and made the right decisions and the changes that were needed. The fact that we have a voice in that is really awesome, and we need to remember that's a great way to operate. I've purchased stock in the Green Bay Packers, and no matter how many times I send them letters or call them, they don't listen to my complaints about the offense. So I really appreciate the board of directors on that. I believe that the board of directors on any board that I serve, we need to be responsive and transparent and respond to the questions that we get from our customers and our members. Much like children, we need to be told what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, what we're going to allow, and we want clear, efficient communication because we want to know how we're going to help you succeed in life. And much like that, that's how I feel about the board of directors that I serve on. And I really appreciate the time, and I want to thank you for considering me as a representative in 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Lori?
Good morning, everyone. Good to be here and to see everyone out at the Jump River meeting once again. 2.5 years ago, I was elected to represent the District 7 at Jump River, and I thank you for your votes of confidence. It's been a really busy time for the past 2.5 years, and out of that chaos that we went through a couple years ago, I think we have created really beautiful, wonderful things. And that's only with the help of you constituents and the larger Dairyland Power Company, as well as the state representatives and the national cooperative electric representatives that we engage with. I just want to say we have worked on many different things. The number one thing was hiring the new general manager who we brought on board and has managed to lead us in a very new direction while streamlining business services, organizational procedures, and new cost-effective services for Jump River members. We've also created the Community Sense program, overseeing the educational scholarship program, and are acquiring new smart metering software system. In working with our constituents, we have provided transparency and accountability to our members. And the number one thing that we did for that providing service to you was putting a video camera in our board meetings where you can see everything that goes on, except for the executive committee meetings, of course. I want to thank you for your support in continuing to vote for me as opposed to my second cousin here. He has done a good job on our LCO council, and it's just because we are such a small community. We're all we all live together. We're all sort of attached to each other, and in this system, both communally as well as on a business level. But thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to serving you further.
So those are the candidates in District 7, Jason and Lori. And the third district up for election is District 8. Wally, do you want to come forward?
Well, good morning, everybody, and first off, I want to say thank you to all of you who have attended today. It's great to see you coming out. Well, I'm running unopposed, and maybe I should just stand here and say, well, okay, you got me for the next 3 years, bye. But I want to reaffirm with everybody that I have made a tremendous turnaround from when I first got on this board. What I came onto the board thinking was totally wrong. And by working with 8 other board members, and especially a new manager, I realized that the direction we were attempting to go to now and have come to is something that I see great for Jump River Electric. And I want to reaffirm with each and every one of you that I'm going to stay on that path with our other board members and what you members want to see. That's my guarantee to you for the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Wally. So if you did not return a mail ballot, you would have received a meeting day ballot when you registered this morning. So I'll ask you at this point to please mark your meeting day ballots for one candidate in each of the 3 districts. Doesn't matter which district you reside in, the bylaws provide that you have a right to vote for one candidate in each of the districts. So if you have a meeting day ballot on the side that has the director candidates, if you would please mark those ballots at this time, but hold on to them because we're going to take up the business that's on the back side of that ballot next. So I'll give you just a moment to please mark those ballots. The bylaws provide for, as I mentioned before, a Rules and Resolutions Committee. One of their responsibilities you already heard about, and that is to adopt rules for the conduct of the member meetings, including the annual meeting. The other important charge to the Rules and Resolutions Committee is to consider recommendations for amendments to the articles and bylaws that come from either the Board of Directors or from the broader membership, and also to consider any policy advisory type resolutions that come from the membership. And in years past, we've had a number of those proposals to deal with here at the annual meeting. This year, if you noticed in the annual report, there are 2 proposals. They appear on page 16B of your annual report. There is one proposed bylaw amendment, and there is one proposed advisory resolution. The committee is charged with the responsibility of looking carefully at the proposals that come before it. They are charged with responsibility for determining if there is additional information that should be brought to the attention of the membership so that when you're asked to vote on the proposals, you can feel that you're doing so on an informed basis and not just by the seat of the pants. And finally, the committee is charged with a responsibility, if they think it's appropriate, to make a recommendation for adoption or against adoption of the proposals that come before it. This year, as I mentioned, there are two proposals. One, and let's take up the proposed bylaw amendment first. It appears on page 16B, along with the report of the Rules and Resolutions Committee. And by the way, let's recognize those folks. I meet with them this past spring, and they do a terrific job. It is a very thoughtful review, a very thorough review, and there are usually very different perspectives that are expressed. Nobody holds anything back. They really do dig into into the proposals that come before them, and I think they deserve an awfully lot of credit. So if any of our Rules and Resolutions Committee members are present, if you would just stand for a moment, please. The members who participated this year are Gary Beatles, who was elected chair of the committee, Sue Farrell, Ken Hodowanik. Is Ken here? Peggy Keene, Hank Liu, Jean Ludvigson, Kathy Overman, Vicky Palya, and Fred Stendel. So our thanks to that group that very seriously and very hard. They take their responsibility very seriously. The bylaw amendment that's proposed would do two things. It's in one section of the bylaws, Article 3, Section 7, Sub E, but it deletes the language that is there, and that addresses the subject that Jerry talked about early in the meeting. If you recall, he closed registration for the purpose of exchanging mail and meeting day ballots. I've gone to a lot of annual meetings of the co-ops in the state over the last 45 years. Most of the co-ops have had a provision in the bylaws, like Jump River has today, to allow for a member to come to the annual meeting, ask for his or her mail ballot back, and to substitute a meeting day ballot. I have never seen that exercised. I'm sure on an isolated occasion it probably was at one of the co-ops around the state, but in my experience I have yet to see that exercised, or have yet to hear the membership say, boy, that's an important option for us to have. What it does do is delay the ability of the election inspectors to start counting the ballots. Today, given the numbers of mail ballots returned, we don't think that will delay the completion of the meeting. Last year it did with the number of ballots that we had. So the proposal that's before you that originated with the board and was endorsed by the Rules and Resolutions Committee, they recommend adoption of it, would eliminate that option. If you return a mail ballot, you've had an opportunity to vote, and it's only the folks who've not voted who then would receive a meeting day ballot. So it would make that change. The other thing that the proposed bylaw amendment would do would be to create the opportunity to add an electronic voting feature in future years. This is something that only became possible one or two sessions back when the legislature amended the co-op voting provision in Chapter 185. And it does require that there be safeguards in place to ensure that it's the member who's actually casting the electronic vote. But most of the co-ops in the state have created the opportunity for that, whether they've actually gone forward and implemented electronic voting or not, they've taken the first step to authorize it in the bylaws. And it can't be done, it's not something the board can do, it's only something that the members can provide this first step to authorize the electronic voting option. And then year by year, it's delegated to the board to decide whether to actually go forward with electronic voting. I do go to a couple of annual meetings during the year, last year, and we'll be going again in a couple of weeks to another, where the electronic voting has been used, and it seems to have worked very smoothly. Matter of fact, I think in both cases, the co-ops have surveyed their members about how the proposal worked, how the process works, and there has not been a single complaint about it. This was discussed at length at the Rules and Resolutions Committee, and as you, that's the proposal there, and as you see in the annual report, the Rules and Resolutions Committee has recommended for adoption, a vote for adoption on the ballot that's on the back of the director ballot. So with that, let me ask first of all if I can have a motion for adoption of the bylaw amendment as proposed by the Rules and Resolutions Committee. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. So it's been moved and seconded to adopt the bylaw amendment to Article 3, Section 7E as printed. Next, let me ask if there are any questions or comments about the proposal. Any questions or comments about the proposal? Yes, Michelle.
Obviously, there's a lot of concern about absentee ballots being cast online. I suspect that it will be a matter of policy at this point, if the membership adopts this resolution, that the policy would be set by the internal operations of the cooperative to establish certain very specific rules for making the credentials correct for those people who are voting online.
So the proposal says that if you see about halfway down in the underlined text, it's absolutely required that the board adopt authentication procedures to govern the voting and make sure that it is indeed the member who's voting. I think in the cases that I have seen where the co-ops adopted the bylaw and then in subsequent years are actually implementing this, I think the safeguards aren't developed by the individual co-op, they're developed by the firm that's retained to conduct the electronic voting. So in practice, it wouldn't strictly be required by this language, but in practice, the co-ops that I've seen use this process have relied on national firms that do a lot of this for those authentication procedures and have consistently been comfortable with the process that the companies have had. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Any other? Yeah, hold on. Let's get you a microphone in the back on the aisle.
I just want to know why you're discussing or why you're wanting to vote on this at the annual meeting when you've got it for a ballot vote. Don't the ballot vote count anymore?
If you're referring to the mail ballot?
Or the ballot that was handed out here?
Yeah, so the folks who returned mail ballots had an opportunity to vote on this based on the written information that's in the annual report. Folks here today who have the meeting day ballot, you'll have an opportunity to vote on it based on what was in the published report and what you hear here today. I'm not sure, does that respond to your question?
Why are you asking for a motion to adopt this then?
Okay, well, the bylaw amendment can only be adopted by action of the membership. So that's why we need formal action by the membership.
I would think the voting on whether it's here or by mail is that type of an adoption.
That's correct. We'll count the mail ballots, and we'll count what the ballots that are cast today.
Then why are you asking us to vote on it right now?
Well, because some of the members received meeting day ballots and haven't had a chance to return a mail ballot. So we'll count everything. And by the way this proposal works, if there has to be a mail ballot opportunity for the members in addition to the electronic voting. There will not be, you won't be limited to just electronic voting. There'll still be mail, if the board is satisfied that safeguards are in place, there will be electronic voting and mail voting and voting at the annual meeting. But we have to have the vote here at the annual meeting. Are there other comments or questions? Any other comments or questions? If not, then I would ask you to please mark your meeting day ballot, top half of that one side where the bylaw amendment is printed. Either mark it for adoption or against adoption. And then finally, there was an advisory resolution that was submitted by a member who is not here this morning, and that resolution relates to would recommend that I think you can see the text there. It's pretty self-explanatory, urging the board to consider selling or leasing all or part of the Hayward office. The committee took a look at this, had a lengthy discussion of it, and in the end, on a vote of 8-1, the committee recommended against adoption of that proposal. So let me ask, first of all, just to formally put this in front of you, if in fairness to the member who submitted this, could I have a motion to approve the resolution that's been proposed? Can we just get this on the floor? I have a motion. Is there a second? And I have a second. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments about this? Hold on, we'll get you a mic.
Can you explain the context behind, the thought process behind closing Hayward? It says to minimize the need for rate hikes, but there's probably more. Can you give me some more context?
Yeah, I'm at somewhat of a loss. Jim, you can maybe chime in a little too, but let me take a first stab at it. I think the members' rationale was that that the cost of retaining that facility exceeds the benefits received from it. And during the discussion, I think there was discussion of the fact that efforts are already underway to lease part of the facility that is not required for co-op operations, and that the co-op continues to use part of the facility for operations, for members to come in, ask questions, pay bills, etc. And so the committee reached the recommendation that I think the term you see in their report is, this is kind of micromanaging that they preferred to leave it to management to continue the efforts to utilize that facility in the most efficient way possible. The members tying this to rates, I think the discussion indicated that even if they leased out as much of the space as possible that the co-op couldn't utilize, it would have such a small effect on the rates, on the costs, that you wouldn't see it in the rates at all. Is that fair, Jim? Okay. Thank you for your question. Other questions or comments?
I'm not familiar with the term, what was it called, advisory resolution. Is this just a message to our board if it passes, if the membership adopts it? It doesn't actually appear in the bylaws anywhere, is that correct?
Right. This is not a proposal to amend the bylaws. It is not something that binds the board of directors' hands. That would exceed the ability of what a resolution like this can accomplish. It would just be advisory. Excuse me. It would be a message that would be sent to the board by the membership present or who voted by mail of what they would like to see done, recognizing that the final decision rests with the board of directors, that you have charged all the whole membership have charged the board with looking carefully at every business issue and exercising their best judgment based on all of the information that they have available to them. So it would be advisory, wouldn't affect the bylaws. Any other questions? We've got one way in the back. Thank you for raising the fly swatter in the back. Oh, okay. We'll come to you next.
Hayward office recently constructed?
2015.
Want to change things.
I can't explain. I don't know. And then we have another question in the back.
Originally, this was constructed to have the appliance sales, and offices were made for those people that are selling the appliances, the closing and talking. And so that's why it's greatly overstaffed. I mean, understaffed, I should say, because it was made to handle appliances and salespersons. As far as the other parts, I think it's all much needed for our trucks and everything, our safety, and everything else is up to standard, and I think it's utilized 100%. I hope that's correct.
Thank you for that background. Appreciate it. Other comments or questions? If not, I'm going to ask you please to mark your meeting day ballot, that bottom part, proposed advisory resolution, either for adoption or against adoption. And again, the committee recommended for adoption on the bylaw amendment and against adoption on the advisory resolution, but each of you is here to exercise your independent thought and judgment. Any questions about the ballot or the process? If not, I'd ask you to, oh, yes, sir. Mic's on its way.
I actually turned my ballot in, didn't realize, I thought it would be a hand vote, not a mark vote. I'm wondering, is there anything I can do about it now?
When you say you turned your ballot in?
Yeah, I turned it in already.
No.
And didn't mark the back.
No, I'm sorry, no, there really isn't anything that we can do.
Okay.
It's just so we can avoid somebody not having an opportunity to vote on everything in future years. Is that something you did at the time you registered, or?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about our procedures at the desk then to make sure that people understand that there'll be discussion of these items at the meeting and to hang on to the ballot. Thank you sorry, but thank you for helping us make the processes better in future years. With that, if you would please pass your ballots to the aisle, we'll collect them. So please pass your ballots to the aisle. I want to make sure every ballot gets picked up and counted. We're going to close the balloting in just a minute, but we want to make sure everybody has had a chance to submit your ballot. Do we have all the ballots? Are there, if you have a ballot, hold up. We've got one here. Any other ballots? We want to make sure we have everyone. Any other ballots? Seeing none, I'm going to declare the balloting closed, and we'll come back a little later in the meeting and report all the results. Thank you.
So good morning. We're going to start off today by going into our financials. A little bit different than we did last year, but we're going to jump right into it. We're going to have David Wozniak step forward from Clifton Larson Allen. David is a senior in the Marshfield office. He focuses on providing tax, audit, accounting services for ag businesses, farm supply, grain, and electric co-ops, as well as individuals. David holds a bachelor's degree in ag business from the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, and he is also a member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. So, David?
Thank you, Jim. And just good morning. So to start off, okay, Clifton Larson Allen audited Jump River Electric Cooperative's financial statements. We gave them an unqualified opinion. What that means is the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. We conduct our audit in accordance to auditing standards generally accepted in the United States and standards applicable to the financial audits conducted in government accounting standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. Next slide here, we kind of go through your balance sheet. If you guys want to follow along in the annual report, some of your financials are in there. First slide is your plant additions. $2.7 million of plant additions in 2018 versus $1.9 million in 2017. This increase included $1 million in meter upgrades, and to be clear, this is after contributions. So if there's a line extension or anything, members will be paying a portion of that line extension. These plant additions are after that. Our next slide are proceeds from long-term debt. Proceeds in 2018 from long-term debt was $5.2 million. 2017, it was $2.3 million. These proceeds decreased the line of credit, $1.8 million. Other uses of these proceeds to expand the plant, and some of these funds are also being held as temporary investments of $2.4 million. Our next slide is principal payments on long-term debt. 2018 principal payments on long-term debt were $769,000 in 2018 versus $799,000 in 2017. Retirement of capital credit. In 2018, the cooperative returned $540,000 to its members from capital credits. This is increased from $368,000 in 2017. Also noticed in this slide, this is the most the cooperative has returned since before 2013. Our next slide is operating revenues. Totaled $4.5 million in 2018 versus $14 million these revenues are after the $350,000 power cost adjustment members saw in their December bill. So without that power cost adjustment, your revenues would have been even higher. Next slide is the net margins. Net margins totaled $779,000 in 2018 versus $948,000 in 2017. Note also, this is after the power cost, $350,000 power cost adjustment on the December bills. So with that, without that power cost adjustment, margins would be even higher. Last slide here is percent of equity to total assets. This decreased during the year because of additional debt taken out from 14.2% in 2017 to 42.8% in 2018. Finally, I would like to thank the accounting and finance departments, especially Lori, Jessica, Sebastian, and Dawn. They help us out during our audit, and they make my life pretty easy here to do your guys' audit. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Sorry, it's easier when it's in my hand. So I get to introduce Jerry. This is probably one of the few things that I get to do where I get to go before Jerry. So at this time, Jerry Carroll, President of the Board of Jumper.
Good morning. There's a couple things I forgot to do earlier. One of those is to recognize some of our previous board members. John Kamoshna, over a 50-year board member and board chairman. Raise your hand, John. Everybody understands who John is. John will turn 100 on May 18th. And I'm sure he could run most everything yet today. We appreciate that. Stanley Cromrey's in the back. I recognize Stanley way in the back from District 4. Are there any other board members that are in the audience that I can't recognize? Thank you. One of the pleasures that I get is to give this report of the board, and I can firmly say that the direction of the board is going which way? Okay. Direction of the board is forward. And that's an interesting slide because we hear from some of our board members, we got to think forward. Well, we did a lot of things over the last several years, but certainly we are moving forward. And the one thing about that is that the major premise that we all understand is that every member of the board is also a member of Jump River Electric. And what we can certainly expect is affordable rates, great service, and electricity upon demand. They didn't tell me I had to do that part. One of the ways that we're going to get to that is last summer we had a strategic planning session, and we ended up with our objectives that are somewhere around here. Help me out here, Denise. Okay. Move me to the next slide if you could. Electronics are wonderful. They really are. As she's moving to the next slide is the major part of what our strategic plan is in the direction of the board. Their number one idea is to control costs. And that is different than what lots of people would expect it really is. What control costs is in our favor is the idea that in the last 50 years we've lost our dairy farms, which were really our small businesses. Small commercial is what we call them, and we've turned into a residential cooperative. And by having that as you move to the next slide, please. A major idea of controlling cost is long-term stabilization of rates. So because we're a residential cooperative, what that means is that our power bill, and our power bill is 56% of our budget. Our power bill is determined by the peaks that are determined by our residential load. Because we don't have anything to flatten out our loads, and Jim is going to talk about this a little bit later, the board's idea is that we need to be able to somehow change those peaks to more even out, so that when Darylyn Power charges us, this year they gave us a 3.16% rate increase in the power we buy from them. That isn't going to be passed on to you. That'll be absorbed into the management of the cooperative, and that's done by our fine management staff. Could we operate under that, guys, forever? We can't. So what we're going to do, and Jim will talk about that too, is that there are some of the things that have been installed within the substations which will soften that load, and there are some other things that are going to happen as well. Anyway, we'll make those significant changes. The other thing we're going to do is that all of us on the board understand that our general manager choice from a couple of years ago is important to us and to the cooperative, and we have signed Jim Anderson to a long-term 7-year contract, kind of like sports, if you want to think of that. But we believe we needed him to move the cooperative forward, and we have him. Next slide. Next issue on the strategic plan is the resolution of our issues with LCO, and really there aren't any issues with LCO. Where we're at there is the easements of our lines across the reservation and the tribal lands. Those have been a problem over the last 15 or so years, but our agreement with the LCO tribe itself is mostly solved. We're waiting for BIA to determine the final outcome of that, but when that's done, when that is finalized, then it will help drive major growth for both LCO and for Jump River Electric, and will continue to soften those peaks and be able to continue the goal to have a long-term rate fluctuations under control. Move me to the next slide if you could. Increase efficiency and system modernization. That's one thing that we have waited to do for a long time. We needed our management staff to determine which software system they were going to install. That is in the process of being installed now, and that will have a major effect on many things that have previously been done in the cooperative. The Next part of that is the new headquarters building. And even though the board has not approved that, you wouldn't know that by reading the papers. If you look at the papers, they'd say, oh, we've already done that. We'll vote on that issue on Monday. But we certainly made significant investment into that and understand that after viewing many other new cooperative buildings around the country, that the efficiency and the savings that can be made by spending money to save money is something that we believe is certainly necessary. You'll hear that a little bit later as Jim Anderson speaks, and as Linda Power from our architectural firm speaks, and that'll be of interest to many of you. The interesting part of that new headquarters building, and I have to give the members a plug here, is that a couple of years ago when things were a little bit cloudy, one of the things that the members gave us as a bylaw change was transparency. Why is that important to us? And certainly we probably didn't understand it as well as we did. But with transparency, I got to tell you the story. One of the members called me last week and was very upset about the idea that he saw these plans in the paper. He says, you don't need a new building. You should look across the street and maybe move into there. And we talked for about 20 minutes. The next day I happened to see him and he says, I apologize. Why do you apologize, Steve? I apologize because after I was done talking to you, I pulled up that video of that meeting, and for 3 hours I watched and I listened to Linda Powers explaining to all of you and the interactions that you had. Yes, you need a new building. No, you don't need to be across the street. She knows what she's talking about. We'll give her a chance for you guys to judge in just a little bit, but the transparency that came from that was wonderful, and that's certainly as it should be, is the transparency isn't necessarily there to be there to judge the board on what they do, but it's there to allow you to hear some of the things that we hear and help understand how we make those decisions. Another part with that transparency bylaw is that I was at a meeting in January and we were talking about governance. And when we got partway through, I'd mentioned that Jump River Electric has the transparency bylaw. By the time I was done explaining that, there were 4 other cooperatives that either stood up then or talked to me in the hallway and said, we need to do that. That's something that's very, very important to our operation, and we're going to do something like that. So thank you, members, for doing that for us. Next is an interesting part, and that is what we've understood with our training with WECA, is that even though all of us on the board understand the necessity of those training sessions and getting us from ground zero to understanding how the cooperative system works itself. And then many of you may think that you can just step right into that, but that's a whole different animal, the cooperative business. And it's necessary to try to understand things, but the difference is that almost all of us have understood as we go to the sessions, and they are at very expensive cost, that we're taught by instructors from Virginia, Missouri, other states. When we come back and we have the interactions with our staff, that they say, well, that doesn't pertain here. What we're going to try to do, especially if the new building is built, is that we have a training room that we will be able to not only have those training sessions here to avoid the travel costs and the motels, but we also will be able to interact with our staff so that when we're done we can all be on the same page. The surrounding cooperatives will join us, as we've talked to some of them, so they will join into those things so that all of us will be able to be on the same page. Hello. The other section is improve communication with our members. I believe the electronic voting one is a big one. What that will do is that in this election, if I can guess, is I knew we had about 140 votes prior to you guys coming here today, and there's about 106 of you. So we really have 250 members that will determine the board elections and the bylaw amendments. it would be great, as we talk to other cooperatives at some of those training sessions, and they tell us they can have 600 votes in one district with electronic voting. And if we can get a larger share of our members to be able to help us decide those things, that's certainly a necessity. The other part that this is going to be is that as our new software systems are installed, then that electronics will be able to move us into give and take discussions with our members on a lot of other different issues. The Community Sense program, you've heard us talk about that for a couple of years. That's going to go into effect this summer. Jim will talk a little bit about that. And another thing that you see as our voters, vote counters are up above, is that we have 5 of them. One of the goals of the board is that as we develop our committees, that we certainly would love to have a member from each of the director districts on each committee, so that we can have geographical representation that mirrors what our voters think. Other things on your board's mind. Broadband is an issue that certainly Chippewa Valley moved forward with, and Taylor Electric is considering and moving forward. It's an issue that your board has started to talk about. Our manager is going to end up with providing us enough of the information to help us make those decisions. Electrical vehicle uses, those things are going to do nothing but increase. We need to be ready for those and understand that that's a major plus to the cooperative, because that also will increase load and be able to break the peaks and give you a lower rate. Outpost buildings, and I wanted to enter the discussion as they were talking about the Hayward building. And even though that was a member resolution to sell that building or lease it, it has been on your board's mind. I need to explain that your Hayward representatives have told us that many of the members up there believe that since that new building was built, that their service and their counting on their electricity has certainly gone up, and they believe that that's directly related to that building. This board has no idea to ever get rid of a Hayward building. It may be that that building gets leased or changed in some fashion or another, but there always will be a building at Hayward. Alternative energy sources, it's time after we've solved a number of our issues that we start looking at those things, and that will be on your board's mind. Sharing among cooperatives, it's another thing that the manager and the board has talked about. What that means is that as our manager comes forward and says, we need to have an engineer on staff, and some of that may be able to be shared with our neighbors at Price Electric or at Chippewa Valley or at Taylor. And other IT people and other things certainly may fit into the scheme just as well. Efficient usable technology, as we moved into our software system, we need to be able to understand those things are going to do good for us when the time comes, and if we need to change it into something in addition to that, we're going to do that. And last but not least, you're always on our mind, and we need to improve our communication with you. So a lot of times at our meetings when I talk and say, I heard from this one, I heard from that one, and many of the board members will say, well, I didn't get to talk to anybody. It really is important that you guys need to discuss with your representatives so that your ideas and views can be shared just as well. Thank you very much for listening. Jim?
So, thank you very much. One thing I would like to mention is we do have another important guest here. I think he's on his last term as the CEO, but we do have Mike Schaefer in the back from Taylor Electric. So Mike, could you please stand up? And the good thing about Mike is also a member of Jump River, so I have to be really careful of what I say or I'm going to hear about it later. So right now, what I would like to do is introduce the employees of Jump River. So if I could, I'd like you to come down to the front when called. Surprised. First we have Lori Davis. Lori Davis is our office manager, finance manager. She basically takes care of the office for me. That's about the best way to put that. Dawn, could you please come down? And Gail, you might as well head this way as well. and Vicki and Tammy. And then we have Denise, who she has a short walk, she can come up. And Jessica, as long as you don't step off the stage, or if you can, however you want to do it. So, and Sebastian, where are you at? I forget about Sebastian because Sebastian and I share the unique opportunity of being the only two gentlemen that get to spend most of our days in the office together. So we're surrounded by these ladies, but these ladies do an excellent job of keeping the business going. They answer questions, they get back to you as quick as possible. One thing you're going to notice is one call resolution from our ladies, so they're going to try to make sure you get to the right department, receive the right help as we go forward in time. But I would like to thank these ladies very much for what they do. And Sebastian. A side note, we had Administrative Professionals Day just the other day. We had to get Sebastian not flowers, we got him a card, a gift card instead, so but thank you very much. So along that line, I'd also like Johnny, could you come forward? And Jeff. Jeff, you're way out there in the back, you can come on down. So Johnny, as he makes this way, and you might as well get the rest of the guys ready. Johnny's our mechanic. Johnny's also the jack of all trades. He takes care of the snow plowing, he takes care of facilities, he does everything around there that basically needs to be done. He does so without asking. We talked about the new building. Johnny's had a big input in the new building to make sure it would serve the co-op and the members. Jeff is our load management specialist. Jeff is getting ready to take on a few new roles at the co-op that he's probably not even aware of. But we've got a good group here. And these two guys aren't on the line crews, but they play an extremely important part with the operations. They help out the line staff. They support them every day. So these are two other folks that aren't necessarily the line crew, but their jobs are probably just as important or more important than the crews. Sam Howard and Joe. Come on up. So I get to introduce Sam Howard. Now, Sam Howard holds a position that I used to hold, except he doesn't have the engineering side of it. I think he's grateful for it. So he's your operations manager of the Hayward office. We also have Joe Donlin. He's out of the Hayward area up there. He takes care of everything up there as line superintendent. He fills in for Sam down at Ladysmith as needed. And these two have some very talented individuals that work for him. So we'll start up with Hannibal. We have two guys in Hannibal that work up in Ladysmith a lot. Scotty and Calvin. Kevin, I'm sorry. I'm going to pay for that one. So, yeah, that's right. So these guys are out of our Jump River, Hannibal area. They take care of everything in that neck of the woods. Coming out of Hayward, I think Corey is Jared. Okay, Jared. Okay, so we have Jared and Calvin. So as comes up, and it seems like never fails, we had an outage, and so the crew that was down here turned around and headed back up. So they're taking care of the outage, but these are the group that Joe looks after and take care of all the stuff up in the greater Hayward area. So we'll move into the outside with the rest of our guys. Dan, Kurt, Rowdy, Marcus, and Greg. So these guys weren't ready for this. As you can tell, they were hanging out in the back, but these guys are very important to the cooperative and need to be recognized. Our newest individual is Rowdy. He is fairly famous locally. He's a product of this area. And so we're pleased to have him on staff. So I didn't get a chance, a very big chance to go ahead and do a lot for these guys on Lineman Appreciation Day, but this group here deserves a lot of credit. They're out there keeping the lights on. They're staying busy, keeping your lights and power to you. They take care of each other. They're a big family. We wouldn't be Jump River without the employees and without these guys, all the employees. So I thank you all. Okay, we'll kind of move on here. So we went through strategic planning like Jerry talked about, and we reevaluated our mission statement. And the mission statement is really who we are in a brief sentence. And you could relate this to a lot of co-ops, and you've probably heard some of this. If you've seen one co-op, you've seen all co-ops. That's not true. If you've seen one co-op, you've seen one co-op. That's how Jump River operates. We operate under the same principles as the rest of the co-ops, but we're unique to ourselves. So every day when our employees come in, this is posted in the offices. We get to read this, we can make sure that we're following our mission statement. The same with the values. The value statement is up front, our members can see it, our employees see it every day, and it's what we try to hold to. If we need to remind ourselves of what's going on in the co-op world, we look at this. We try to refocus and recenter as we look at decisions we need to make that affect membership. And I put this up here. This is something that I believe, and I believe all the employees here at Jump River, the board, and everybody, we've reestablished focus on the 7 cooperative principles. This is what guides us. This is what makes us a cooperative. This is what we need to remember as we make decisions for you and represent you in the community. So, and I think this year we've met or used every one of these principles repeatedly. So they're all there. Concern for community, that's a big one. One I would like to highlight is Principle 6, cooperation among cooperatives. So the 8th of this month was National Lineman Appreciation Day. And we were trying to figure out what to do, or I was, for our linemen on a Friday. It wasn't on the day, but we tried to do things at the end of the week. That way they can get about their business. We can move forward. The 12th, we got a call from one of our fellow co-ops. We are in a bad way, we need help. Without even thinking, a couple phone calls were made, crew volunteered, and we joined 16 other co-ops in heading down into Minnesota area to a fellow co-op to provide service to them. Jim Kruger, sorry, Jim will give you that too, the president and CEO did send out a notice. This went to all the co-ops. But if you look at 10,000 members, that would be the entire Jump River system, no power. Our crews went down with a lot of other crews and helped establish that power. They got everybody back on in about, I think it was 5 days, Kevin?
It was actually less.
So it was quick in 2 days. Dairyland was also down there. They had a lot of line to put back up, but everybody came together and it worked. The principles work, and that's what we need to remember as we go forward. We're there for other people, but other people are there for us. And it could be on mutual aid, but it could be on something as simple as we need expertise on a finance or an engineering item. Everybody is there to support us. So you've seen this slide. The handshake was a little different. And that's one thing, when Jerry puts the slides together, he gets to kind of take over everything I've got. He cherry picks me. So we had a strategic plan, and that's important. That was one of the first things I established when I came back, was to get the directional co-op established and find out what we needed to do and where our focus should be. We talked about improved communication, so we tried to do that with the internet, with our webpage, with Facebook, with mailers, with news articles, going out and meeting and greeting people at different events. I've tried to get around to a lot of town halls. We try to talk to people. I have an open door policy in the co-op. If a member wants to talk, I'll make myself available to that member. And I believe that goes all the way to one of the speakers you're going to hear later on has the same theory. But that's the co-op way. So we've done that. I believe we've accomplished that, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop. We're going to still keep working on it. Resolution with the LCO. Yeah. Like Jerry said, at this point, I did have conversations lengthy yesterday, an update, and we've pretty much reached an agreement to agree on the contract so long as the BIA can jump in. The thing that kind of threw a monkey wrench in all this is that the BIA went on an unexpected vacation. So as we were nearing a possible agreement in December, they decided to stay home. I guess it wasn't their choice to stay home, but they stayed home. They couldn't go to work. When the government reopened, our lead attorney on the BIA side was in the midst of having a child. So she was very familiar with our case. So I'm pleased to say Caitlin is back to work, and as of this last week, we've made more progress on this issue in trying to get a resolution, and I'm hoping within the next 2 to 3 weeks to be able to present to the membership exactly what's going to happen. But we're very, very close. And like Jerry said, the issue isn't with the LCO. At this point, we've agreed. It's now coming down to the BIA says we have to do in the procedure, so we follow their law. So, and it does offer a great growth opportunity for both the LCO and for Jump River once this is done, because we can move forward with a lot of good projects that are just waiting to happen. Jerry talked about the efficiency and system modernization. So we did an about face, we put in a new software system, NISC. It goes live next weekend. So when that happens, you're going to have access to information you've never had access to before. You can log into your account on SmartHub, you can look and see what's happening. You have control over things on your bill that you've never had before. And as this moves forward and goes a little farther, you're going to have even more control. And you're going to have new features that were never available that are suddenly going to become available to you. You're going to become more efficient users of our product, and you can help us conserve those spikes and peaks that we have as we move forward. The other thing we're doing is we're putting in a voltage control software system. This is something I used out west. It worked very well. So we've brought in the program here to Jump River. It should go online shortly. And we're also working with Dairyland, and we're doing this a little independent of the Dairyland project they're working on with the PulpNet. But we are going to get our system up, work with Dairyland, and if it works, we're going to learn from each other and be able to share it with the rest of the co-ops. We also get a SCADA system out of this. SCADA is a supervisory control and data acquisition, and I probably just lost everybody in here. So what this is going to give us the ability to do is to monitor each feeder, each line throughout the entire system. We're going to know where an outage is the moment it happens. So great stuff coming and big benefits to the co-op. That kind of falls in with control costs. It's our job as management here, directed by the board, to control cost of the co-op. We want to make sure that we're spending your dollars wisely. We don't misspend. We do everything that we can in our power to control the budget and stick to the budget and do what's right for the future generations coming up. So, we talked about NISC. This next month, when you open your power bill, this is what you're going to see. The power bill's changed. You're going to have new information on the power bill. As you look at the power bill, you'll be able to see the chart of the graph. You'll be able to see what the daily cost is and where the charges go. You're also going to have, for those of you who like to pay online or pay with credit card or debit, right there, an 800 number. It's going to be available to you 24/7. We'll always have a way for you to get in and pay your bill. Up here in the top is SmartHub. SmartHub comes with NISC. SmartHub is a portal so you can actually get into your account, look at your account, and see what's going on. So it's good stuff coming your way. This kind of falls in with Jerry. As we look at this, broadband is probably something we're going to need to look at because we need to make sure everybody has access to this. One big change coming, billing cycles. Now, everybody's used to their billing cycle. You get one bill from Jump River no matter where you live. But we have to change that. And the reason we're changing that is because the cash flow that comes in doesn't time itself out with all the bills that come into Jump River. So we have to constantly manage or use short-term lines of credit to pay bills while we wait for the payments to come in from our members. So what we're doing, in July, we hope July, it could slip to August, but we're targeting July, we'll move to the 3 billing cycles. If you live in Hayward, you're going to be cycle 1, pretty much like you are right now, no change. Lady Smith, you're going to be cycle 2. The date will be pushed till around the 10th. So you're going to see the 10th, the bill will go out. Jump River, you guys are going to be right at the end on the 20th. So when this goes into effect, you will notice a difference on your power bill. Some of you are going to have a shorter term bill, some are going to have a little longer as we get this in place, but one bill will be different. We're going to let everybody know what's going on. You're going to see a flyer in that bill when it comes out of what's going on. We'll make sure that we're very aware and communicated with as we move forward with this. And it will streamline the revenue flow to the co-op. We won't have to use a short-term line of credit to pay our power bills. We won't have to use a short-term line of credit and then repay it and go back and forth. The whole purpose of this is to become more efficient. With NISC, with the metering system coming in, we're going to prepaid metering. Prepaid metering is something that I've been wanting since I got out here, and we just weren't in a position to put it in. So as a member, you're going to have the ability to prepay a power bill, just like you would feed a meter. So when you go up there, you can put money onto your account, you can watch your account, When the account gets low, you get a notification, you either add money, and if you don't add money, the power will go out. So it works just like a power meter, but you don't put the money into the meter. This helps our certain members that need help with budgeting their power bill and to know where their power costs go. Some people take our service for granted. If you go to a service station and you fill up your tank, you pay for it. This operates kind of like that. Some of our members need to be able to make sure that they have enough money to fill their tank. It's not for everybody. Some people like this, some people don't. But some of our members that are struggling, this will offer them an opportunity to keep the lights on, pay down their back payments, and still move forward in a positive direction. So PCA, you guys have probably seen this before, power cost adjustment. So some of you probably haven't noticed or have noticed that we brought back the PCA. It was removed right when I got here, we brought it back. The PCA, when used properly, works both directions. It works for the membership to give you money back, and it also for unexpected surcharges or some unexpected power issue that we may get, we can pass that cost through so we don't have to carry it over at the end of the year and try to finance it through borrowing. So, like we just talked about it, Dairyland Power will give us a PCA. They're very good. It doesn't happen very often, but if they pass one through, it'll be a direct pass through to our membership, spread equally out. It doesn't happen a lot, but it needs to be there in case. By the way, that will not happen unless the board of directors approves us to do that, so we're giving the control to the board on this one. We're also going to use it to return credits to you, excess margins. So this past December, we used the PCA, and that was one of the things that was talked about a little earlier with David. The PCA returned money to the membership. The board knew we were going in with excess margins. We'd had a good year, it'd been cold, our power sales were up, things looked well. So the board made the decision not to put this into a capital credit and pay you 30 years from now on that amount of money. They took a portion of that money and paid you directly back on your power bill. So as we operate the co-op and become more efficient, the need for the PCA was to be there, and it was to give us opportunities to do things just like this. We talked about community sense. It's been a long struggle, and I think Niles could probably attest to this. It wasn't the fastest way to get it up, but there was a lot of hoops we found that we needed to jump through, that we couldn't just start the program. So the program is going to roll out now with NIST coming in. We can start this community sense program. We can roll it out. It's there. It'll be probably looking at your June or probably July bill. You'll see it actually come about. Each member is going to have an opportunity to have their bill rounded up. And if you don't want to be in the program, you can opt out of it. If you stay into it, it'll just take it to the nearest dollar amount and even it up. That money will go into a pool. So if each member participates in this program, and we're estimating low, about $40,000 a year could go into a program that could allow us or the membership, you and representatives from the membership, to determine which organization they'd like to help. Do they want to help out a fellow member? Do they want to help out a group? Do they want to help something in the community that's important to the Jump River membership? So how this is going to work is we've already had 9 people lined up, 1 from each district, that are going to serve on this committee. They're going to review the applications come in. They're going to decide if it's a worthy request, and then they'll act on the request and they'll decide where this money goes. They operate underneath a set of bylaws. They're governed by the executive committee of the board, and it will work very well within the community. My guess is that we'll start meeting here sometime this summer, as we won't really have any funds available until this starts to get some legs, but we'll know what we're doing and how to spend the money. I should say, the membership will know how to spend the money. We don't have any part of it. Operations, best part of the day. So we're getting really close to finishing up the meter system. That's important because that ties in with the new software system. We have to have it. It needs to be in place. It works hand in hand with what our system is. It'll give you the best benefit as a member. We're going to be very aggressive going after our right-of-way trimming and our spraying. We've already seen great benefits of an aggressive tree trimming and spraying program. Reliability in 18, 99%. Steadily increasing, getting better and better. And that has to do with the crews out there taking care of the lines, making sure we're getting trees out of the way, nothing's growing up into it, nothing can cause a future problem. We're still going to be replacing some old lines, old underground lines, some old overhead lines. That's part of our capital work plan. You're going to see crews out and about. If you want to know if you're in an area that's affected, get a hold of Sam Howard, get a hold of Joe Donlin. They will tell you exactly where we're going to be and when we're going to be there. We're going to keep adding technology. I am a guy that loves technology. Technology will help us be more efficient. As we become more efficient, we serve you better. Power becomes more efficient, more reliable, and eventually it's a lower cost because of the investments we've made. And that's what we're after, rate stabilization. There we go. Did I go the right direction? Sorry about that, technical. Technology. There you go. And I didn't use it right. So what's happened here with Jump River this last year and a half, 2 years, we talked about it was going to be a time of change. It was going to be a time for us to move forward, and it was going to be a time for us to do something that was right. I believe right now that the board and management are working very well together. It's an effective group. We don't always agree. If you watch some of the videos, you'll see that. But we're not supposed to agree. We're supposed to vet out all the information and come up with the best possible answer. And by us working good together, and technology's getting me again. So we know that we're efficient and we're controlling costs. That was evident of the money we returned to you. We're becoming better at what we do. We're making Jump River better. And now it's stuck. Oh, there we go. Okay, so last year we retired 416,088,353, and I'm going to have to talk to Dave because our numbers don't match. But that's our numbers that we retired in capital credits last year. We also retired 350,000 to our members through the PCA directly. Last year we returned over $750,000 to our membership. And that's outstanding. That means that our co-op is working right, and the excess revenues aren't for profit. They go back to our membership. So we're doing what we're supposed to do, and we're doing it right. So in the end, management, board, all the employees you saw work very well for you and try to make things move forward as best we can. Number one question in everybody's mind, rates. So what's the new building going to cost? What's happening to us? Where are we at? What happened with this 3.16% increase we got from Bearland? What's that going to do to your power bill? We're not going to raise your rates. We're going to keep the rates right where they're at. We've effectively put together a plan to manage the co-op to absorb those costs. And that comes a lot with the accounting staff, myself. We work really hard on trying to figure out what to do to make sure that we're not going to pass those costs to you if we can. We're going to try to take care of it in-house. As Jerry said, newspapers already told us that we're going to build a building. Not true. That's up to the board to decide. But the question comes up, can we do it? JREC is in a position right now to put a building in, a new building, new headquarters building in, without affecting rates. For us, it's the best time to do it. Interest rates are low. It's time for us to move forward. And if we can do it without affecting the rates to the members, it makes perfect sense to go ahead and replace the system or the headquarters. Technology is great. Okay. Now, there are some things that can upset the apple cart. That can change rates. If we have a large storm, like our neighbors just went through, and it becomes devastated, rates go up because that's a lot of infrastructure to replace. That's a lot of money that has to be borrowed to replace it. That can affect the rates. So be aware if a tornado comes through, could happen. Rates can also be impacted by increases in the cost of transportation, labor, material supplies, and wholesale power. They kind of all work together. We budget the best we can for them to make sure we can keep the rates under control. But in the event there's an unforeseen circumstance, there is a possibility that something could happen. I'd be a fool to stand up here and say that the rates are never going to go up. They could go up, but we're going to make every effort to keep them under control and down and stabilized. I put this up here last year for Jerry to use. Just want you guys to know again, Jump River, we're in the middle of the pack. We have a high facility charge. Our rates are still low as far as our hourly use goes. We're in the middle of the pack with the rest of the co-ops. And there's a few investor owns in there that Excel Energies and others that have 30 to 40 members per mile when we're operating with 5 members a mile. So that does make a definite impact on our rate structure. But we're doing good. We're right where we should be. A lot of co-ops are going to do a new COSA this next year. You'll probably see us drop a little bit because we were a little proactive. We did our COSA a year ago. It cost us sort of study. I keep thinking I should drop money into a drawer. So the keys to success for Jump River: ideas, plans, actions. That's how we operate. We plan it out, we talk about it. We go ahead and look at those ideas that come about, and we're seeing if they're going to work, and then we take action on those ideas. It all leads to success, and I believe that's where we're at right now, as being a very successful co-op. So, with Willie being back, thank you all very much. Now I get to give the mic up to Linda Powers, and she's going to go ahead and explain about the new building. You might remember Linda from last year. She has 35 years of architectural experience. She's an associate in applied science from Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College. She's a registered architect. She's also become a very good friend and knows that we do not want to spend a lot of money. So we'll let her move forward with that.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to all the members of Jump River Electric Co-op. Some of you probably do remember I was here in the fall. Just to let you know, we were toying with the idea of looking into new headquarters, and we've been working very, very hard. I've had the pleasure of working with the entire board of directors. I've attended several of their meetings, and also with many of the staff. Sam, Lori, and John have served on a building committee together with Jim, and it's been a pleasure working with everyone here at Jump River. Just a little background. I've been, as Jim mentioned, I've been in the architectural world for over 35 years, but I'm kind of a homegrown girl. I'm from Cameron. I went to school in Rice Lake, and I've enjoyed working with a lot of your neighboring co-ops here in northwestern Wisconsin. This is just kind of a quick list of some that I've worked on in the last 15 years. You'll see a lot of your neighbors. I see some board members from Chippewa Valley here that I worked with on their facility a few years ago. So that's been a big part of my career since the very early days. Basically what we've been doing, we've been looking at your facility needs. Obviously your very first and foremost need is keeping the lights on, and the line crews are the guys that do that for you. They're out there doing what they can. You don't necessarily associate that with your building, but for them to do their jobs effectively and get out there when they need to, they need the support of a facility that takes care of the things behind the scenes. The mention of Freeborn Mauer, just going through this major ice storm. I'm also working with them, but we're just starting to talk about a new facility there. And after they got the power back on and had time to take a deep breath, I got a call from their managers saying, this project needs to move forward. We realized how terribly under-suited we are with our current facilities when something really bad happens. So you don't necessarily associate a building with keeping your lights on, but they do go hand in hand. The first thing that we do, pretty much with every co-op I've worked with, when they start saying our facilities are not meeting our needs, is we take a look at your existing facilities. There's always a lot of things we want to look into and be aware of. We want to look at safety. You know, is the traffic pattern safe? Can the members get in and out of the facility without the fear of a line truck coming out of nowhere or something like that? We look at security. Security both for the members and the employees. You know, there's security of your information and privacy type things. Another thing that's always a major concern is accessibility. Your current facility was constructed in 1952. There were no accessibility codes in 1952. You know, fortunately, your building is that great. A lot of buildings had several steps. You know, the doorways are narrow. There are things that have been done to the best degree possible, but there are other things that are just not realistic. Bathroom access is very limited, and the walls are all built out of concrete, so they're very difficult to change. We looked into that. We looked at energy efficiency. I find it amazing because I've grown up and my career started when energy efficiency started to become a big deal. Your current building was built with no insulation in the walls. They were solid block, covered with brick, and absolutely no insulation. That has since been changed to the best degree possible. There's furring, there's insulation's been added, but there are parts of it that still just do not function, and there's not a lot you can do about it. Foundations are very difficult to insulate after the fact. So we looked at things like that. We also looked at information technology. Again, in 1952, there was no such thing as information technology. There were no computers. People like Lori had a manual adding machine on their desk. Now everything is, as Jim mentioned, tied to technology, and you need a support system in your building that works with that. At Jump River, the whole technology system is kind of in the corner of the garage. Probably not the best place for it, but you do what you have to do. And then finally, we looked at the mechanical and electrical systems. And again, technology has changed the way these systems operate. And my photo here, I kind of chose it on purpose, the one on the bottom. You can see all the little individual air conditioning units. I'm guessing that building didn't have air conditioning when it was built. And the central heating plant has long since been abandoned. So now there's just kind of this Band-Aid approach of a lot of little units. So not very efficient, not the best way to handle energy. The co-op also includes several accessory buildings, and we looked at those. Are there ways we can upgrade some of these buildings? Is there something we could do to make this work? There's a couple of Quonset huts on site that are in pretty poor condition. A wood frame pole building. It serves as a good cold storage, but it's not very secure. I understand somebody cut a hole in the side of it a few years ago and helped themselves to some of the contents. So we've got some issues with security, safety. And then there was a 1998 addition to the garage, but as the line crew can attest, the trucks keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and now John can barely get one in the garage and not hit the wall. On one hand, things change. So we looked at all of that. Then there's also the Lemke building or buildings. There's several buildings that have been joined together over the years with various construction and infills, and I understand a new waterfall feature this winter when the snow got real heavy on the roof. There was a lot of water coming in. So we looked at these buildings. Basically, our final conclusion was it's not good money spent to be trying to work with them. So we began to look at a new facility building. And some of the priorities, and these were not things that I drive, I listened to the co-op, I listened to the board of directors and say, well, what are you looking for in a new building? And one of the things was, we need office space upgrades. We did a accounting of the spaces needed and determined that to effectively meet the current and future needs of Jump River Electric, the office space needs were 285% of the office space available. Meaning they're packed in there pretty tight right now, and they're doing a good job with what they have, but they're really on top of each other. The garage warehouse space is there, but again, it's in several buildings, many of which are in poor repairs. So we looked at safety, the suitability for the spaces, for the use intended, the Lemke building, the sidewalls are so short that the trucks don't really fit anywhere except right down the middle, and it's hard to get efficient storage if you can only use the middle of a building. So we looked at those types of things. We looked at workflow efficiency. If you've got things scattered out between 4, 5, 6 buildings, there's a lot of time just spent running back and forth. We also looked at energy efficiency, as I mentioned earlier, and the buildings are all in very, very poor standard as far as energy efficiency. And then we looked at the cost effectiveness of remodeling versus new. And the bottom line was you probably spend nearly as much remodeling, and then you're still dealing with substandard aged buildings. And so that was why we made the decision, or the board of directors, I presented them with 4 options, 3 of which retained parts and pieces, and 1 that was an option to just raise what's there and start fresh, and that was the option that they asked me to pursue. So as we looked at a new facility, some of the design priorities that were given to me, first and foremost, was to maintain a headquarters in Ladysmith. So we looked at the existing site and considered the option, as I mentioned, to demolish all of the existing facilities on the site, but we will be able to phase this such that the co-op will not have to leave the site during construction. The new facility that we were proposing would go on the north end of the site. The buildings that are there now would come down. While the new facility is being built, the co-op would continue to operate out of the current office and garage that's on the south side of the building. Once it's done, they'll flip-flop, they'd move into the new, and then the rest of the old would come down. Energy or building features in the new building, again, energy efficiency. We looked at using very high insulation values. Part of our process when we design a building is there's a state required exercise we have to go through to show that we're meeting the International Energy Efficiency Code. And we did this, and this building, as we have it designed, exceeds the standards of this code by 20%. We're using a highly efficient HVAC system, and we've put in measures for future solar energy features if that would become something that would become a priority. And we also look at using sustainable design. We use high efficiency lighting, water-saving plumbing fixtures, and uses of material that have high recycled content, and trying to use local materials whenever possible. We want to build this building for the next 50 to 75 years, and so we use durable materials that's built out of masonry and concrete that they may cost a little more upfront than wood or metal, but they provide a long-term, very cost-efficient building that will serve you and your future members for a long time to come. As far as the building design itself, as we currently have things laid out, there's an office of approximately 13,000 square feet that includes a member service and lobby area, a private meeting room for members, and access to a bathroom for members that's all private or secure, so that any member can come in, get into any of these spaces, but the employees in the co-op are in a separate area other than the people as they need to meet with you would come up and meet with you. So it creates great security for the employees, and it creates a much better situation for member privacy. We have the offices for all of the individuals that Jim introduced earlier. We've got a crew space that includes a meeting room, locker space, a training room that was mentioned for board training, employee training, and also community use, and a board room for board of directors meetings, and also storage and support spaces. The garage area is about 25,000 square feet, and this includes the vehicle maintenance area, storage space that's large enough to keep all of the trucks in one location and keep them all under roof, and it provides for safe ingress and egress from the site and from the garage for the trucks, a warehouse where all the materials are managed and it's all kept where someone can keep an eye on everything at all times. And then there's a single location for deliveries. There would be a loading dock where all deliveries would take place. And that would be directly adjacent to the pull yard, which would be a very efficient operation. So, of course, the question everybody has on their mind is, what is it going to cost? Well, current building costs right now are running at about $155 to $160 a square foot. And we received bids this week for this project, and it's right there in that range, right in that current cost. Interest rates are still historically low, which makes it a very good time to be looking at a new building. And the cost of waiting can be significant. Building costs are going up right now. The construction industry is very strong. There's not an excess of labor available, so construction costs continue to rise. I did compare the cost of the bids we received this week to Price Electric, which was just done back in 2017, and they're up about 5%. But if I compare it back to Bayfield, which was done just 5 years ago, costs are up 21%. So if this were to continue, waiting another 5 years on a project of this size could cost about $1 million. And the other thing about a project like this in a community such as Ladysmith is while it's going on, it provides a great stimulus to your local economy. You've got, at times, 25, 50 construction workers coming and leaving Ladysmith every day. They're going to eat, they're going to put gas in their trucks, and it does a lot of good things for your community. So, what's next? Design is complete, as I mentioned, and bids have been received. Action by your board of directors is needed before we proceed. And I understand they have a meeting on Monday where they will be taking this item up. Pending an approval by the board, we would review and award the bids, and then construction could start as early as June of this year. Again, thank you for allowing me to address you this morning and to give you a little insight about your new possible headquarters.
So we've talked a lot about business. We get to learn some fun facts now. I asked for 2 years, I've asked Barb, Nick, to come down and talk to us. Barb's the president and CEO of Dairyland Power. This year she couldn't dodge me anymore, so Barb is here. So since 2014, Barb has been the president and CEO of Dairyland Power. She's been in various leadership roles with Wisconsin Public Service Corporation, now WEC Energy Group. She has 38 years in the electrical and gas energy industry in a variety of leadership positions, including past president of the Minnesota Energy Resources, I got that right, president of Michigan Gas Utility, president of Upper Peninsula Power, and senior vice president of energy and delivery for customer service for WPSC. Under her leadership, Dairyland has been very focused on resource diversification, sustainability, and leadership development. Dairyland's solar investment alone doubled the generation in Wisconsin when it was initially installed. Barb is very engaged, and I can say that because her schedule never seems to meet with what we need to do as far as getting her. She's engaged community member. She's got 30 years of board service in various profit and nonprofit boards. She's got 7 years as a director of Seventh Wave, a 6-year appointment as a trustee on the State of Wisconsin Investment Board. She includes oversight of state funds at that board of over $100 billion. She serves as a board of director for Electric Power and Research Institute, EPRI board. Barb is presently serving on the board of directors for the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, as well as a trustee on the finance and committee for Viterbo University. Barb has a bachelor's in communications. She's completed the Harvard Business School's advanced management program. Her and her husband are from the La Crosse area. We did get to a little more insight. Barb has 6 children, 15 grandchildren, and her and her husband enjoy teaching their children about literacy, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, STEM, books, and activities. So it's my pleasure to introduce Barb. She is the head of Dairyland, and she's going to give you some great information.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. And sorry my staff sent you the long bio, so next time be short and hopefully he'll have me back. And I do have to tell you, the reason I wasn't able to be here is because I'm out-of-state family. I grew up in the Phoenix area, and there were family weddings and events, so I would have been in hot water with my family, Jim. And so thank you all, but I'm delighted to be here with you today. And I'm going to, Denise, just remind me the top one is going forward? Yeah, down. Great. Thanks. So what I'm going to do today is, I know it's getting later and I'm right between you finding out all the results of voting and lunch. So I want to tell you about Dairyland. I'm going to also talk about the evolving industry, and then tell you about our strategy of resource diversification, and then what we've been doing in some of our plant decommissioning.
So those are the topics that I have, and I know Jim will give time later, and I'm happy to stay around for as long as you'd like for any question and answers that you might have. So let me start out first by telling you a little bit about Dairyland. This is a picture of Dairyland Cooperative, and Jim talked about the cooperative that you are at Jump River and how all of you formed Jump River to provide you with electric distribution service. And then the 24 members that you see in that map, those are members in western Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Illinois. They got together and decided to form a cooperative to provide them with power generation and with transmission so that they could have affordable generation, and in some cases, so they could even have generation provided to them. So we, Dairyland, are your cooperative, and I view all of our consumer members as members that we consider as we make our decisions back in Dairyland. You can see some of the facts about us. We're about 550 employees. Last year, we were about 1.5 billion in assets. You'll see up here that we're 1.4 billion in assets. I'll tell you about that at the end. We have about 3,000 miles of transmission, and I'm closing in on over 300 substations. So that tells you a little bit about your generation and transmission cooperative. We are part of a very sophisticated and complicated industry. It's in the throes of evolution right now that are very different than anything that I've seen in the 38 years that I've been in the industry. So I want to tell you a little bit about our challenges, and I know that you too on the distribution part of the business are facing some challenges. So I'd like to tell you about the things that I see that are different today, and this is impacting not just your generation and transmission cooperative, but right here at home, I'm sure you see them. Two significant differences in our industry. Number one is that our loads are flattening, or in other words, our members are using less energy today than they've used during the entire history of our industry. So that's number one. And even when I started in the 80s, we saw load growth going up about 4% a year. Then later in the 90s, it was about 2%. Today, we're seeing flat. We've used 0.4% in our long-term forecasts. So much like you, when you have lines to reinvest in, if you have new needs and you're not growing, it adds challenge for a capital-intensive industry like we are, whether we're distribution, transmission, or generation. The other significant difference is that there are real affordable substitutes or alternatives in the market. So it puts, it's a challenge and an opportunity for those of us in the industry. And so what I'll talk about is how do we get prepared for that challenge and how can we meet that. So what I've told our group back at Dairyland, we want to make sure that we reinvent ourselves. We don't want to be like a Kodak that you don't hear about anymore. We don't want to be like a Sears that wasn't able to meet the needs of their customers. We want to meet the needs of our members. We want to be relevant. So we know that that is going to require us to change. And I put here the headlines that the CEO of GM, even after record earnings, announced that they were going to be having layoffs in their factories because they knew that they had to change the way that they did business if they were going to evolve in the new electric vehicle market. So what does that mean? So I'd like to take you through a series of slides to tell you how I see that we need to evolve in the industry. I'm going to show you some slides that I reviewed with the, Jim talked about the Electric Power Research Institute, and this is a presentation I gave to a summer seminar that included global advisory folks that were regulators around the world, policymakers, as well as CEOs. And I think this is relevant for everyone in this room because it impacts us. So I came up with the title that you see here, from the horseless carriage to the driverless car, and this is why. Because many of the people here in this room might actually remember forming Jump River. I don't know if you have any of your members here, but we have some of the members at Dairyland that remember when they formed Dairyland. So I recall that growing up, my grandparents told me before there were automobiles because they were alive when there were horses. Now, I'm from a family of immigrants in New York City and then out west. I know most of the folks here have rural roots, but it's still the same. They remember before electric vehicles. Now they're all over, and you all read stories of having driverless cars, autonomous mobile cars. And my grandchildren, some of them that haven't been born, some of them that are just born, may never drive a car. So if you think of, in our memory right here, people sitting in the room, my vintage, maybe not those of you who are so young, sitting over in the corner, but in our consciousness, we went from the horseless carriage to the driverless car. So my message is, the folks coming into our industry now, and those of us who are here, have to think about it and get ready for it. And we have to do things today and still get the beer out, and then my staff didn't know what that meant. So what it means is we have to keep the lights on. We have to do the things that make sense today while getting ready for tomorrow. So how are we going to do that? So as I think about that, well, there's a challenge. We still live in the here and now. We have a lot of challenges. You saw one of which up here, the old facility that you have. Sometimes there are things where we feel like we're still living in the Stone Age. Some of the dead spots that we have, some of our mobile radio. I mentioned to one of your members here when I came to Dairyland in 2014 and logged onto my computer after 3 times putting in my password, we were on Lotus Notes, which is a very old and dated calendaring system. So we need to modernize, just like Jim showing you the new CIS system. But we're still in the Stone Ages, and this was aired in 1962. Many of you remember that was on primetime TV, but for those of you who weren't quite around yet, let me just advance this because I think I have a little sound coming. Oh. One more. Let's do this. And then right after the Flintstones came the Jetsons, right? So now I'm going to take you into the space age, right? Because we're going to have lots of things that are coming our way, and it's going to be like going from the Flintstones to the Jetsons. You heard Jim talk about SCADA. There's now data points all over. Every 15 minutes they can read a meter. I don't know if you're getting that data. So think of all your meters, think of every 15 minutes, they get a read, they put it into a computer, and then it can go to Dairyland, and we get that for 600 members. And then he's going to talk to you later about load control, and then that load control can instantaneously send feedback to Jump River, to us at Dairyland, and then we send it to what we call our Midwest Independent System Operator, and then it is just instantaneously keeping the grid on throughout the entire eastern interconnect of the United States. That's, when you think of the Jetsons, that's what's going to happen, and we have to get ready for that and keep it secure, because you've all heard about cybersecurity. We have to make sure bad guys aren't trying to get in, and we watch on our computers at Dairyland every single second. They're watching to make sure people aren't trying to get in, and they actually can see people trying to get in through our firewalls and track that. And so all of that is like thinking to the future, but how do we get from here to there? And that's what this slide is about. How do we get to what we need to be? And I think we're doing those at Dairyland, your G&T cooperative, as well as at Jump River, from the conversations I've had with Jim and the things we're doing together and that I watch him and the other co-ops do. First, as you see, we're deploying electric technologies, whether that's the SCADA, battery technologies, the voltage reduction that you see. So we're learning how to do those things. We're getting ready. We're also piloting innovation in strategic ways that aren't costly, learning about it, making sure that we're not getting ahead of ourselves. We're looking at how we can create microgrids when it makes sense for industrial customers and the distribution co-ops. And we're looking at our employees. You saw them up here today, and I call them, we have to look for Centaur employees. So what does that mean? You know, some of us remember mythology from grade school and high school. It's the half beast and half human. So we have to have people who are willing to come into a very traditional business, people who will be able to adjust to living part in the ages of the Stone Ages and living in a Flintstone world, and part of getting ready for the Jetson world. And so we need the employees that can do that and learn every single day. And we need boards of directors that do that too, because there's so much to learn every single day. And our industry is so very complex and complicated. And then we still have to communicate in a very simple way, as we do at our statewide, to our membership. So in addition to that, testing the Internet of Things. We need to make sure that we get ready by thinking smart towns, smart cities, smart devices, the smart meters, and just your hub that you talked about, smart ways for people to look at how they use their energy, and they can use it smarter and get more and more efficient, like the new building that Linda just talked to you about. So that's what I believe our challenge is to get ready for the evolving industry. I know you know it's here for the distribution. It's coming in spades for the generation part and transmission part of your business, and we're getting there and evolving. I like to talk about an evolution, not a revolution. And these are the things we're doing to get ready without moving too fast and spending too much money. So after laying that, I'd like to tell you about our resource diversification, because that's a major strategic initiative at Dairyland Power Cooperative. It's something that we've heard that our members want to do, and it's key to the future. When I think about resource diversification, you've probably all heard in the headlines that there's talk about 100% carbon-free by 2050. There's also a requirement that we provide safe, reliable energy that includes the generation and transmission, and that means that we have to plan according to national standards, and without getting into a lot of detail, but it means that we design our systems so that there would only be one prolonged outage in 10 years. We call it the 1 in 10, simply. It's more complicated than that, but in order to do that and still diversify, we want to make sure it's smart, prudent, and measured. And I believe that's what we're doing at Dairyland. So part of that is what you heard us talk about in the past, and I think in the last couple of years, when Jim told you I couldn't be here, we had some of our members here, or some of the other staff. John Carr, I think, was here last year. And Jeff Springer, talking about electrical vehicles. So get some of our great staff coming in. But you remember them talking about the solar, and you can see on this map 18 different member cooperatives where we have projects installed for the up to 25 megawatts. And this installation of this solar, even though larger things are announced, has doubled the amount of solar in the state of Wisconsin, like Jim mentioned. We also have installed some wind, but solar, I believe, is a real story of the cooperation among cooperatives, because our distribution cooperatives, so you met Mike Schaefer, you know Jim, and several of the others formed Distributech. They worked with some of the national groups that formed the entity that bid, because we did a nationwide bid on this. We got over 100 responses to our RFP, and Distributech, our distribution co-ops, won the bid. So the final results, like I said, 25 megawatts, 18 sites, and we serve it in 4 different states, and it powers a lot of homes using solar energy. So a real success story of cooperation among cooperatives. We've also just recently announced 150 megawatts of solar in Jefferson County, so that's kind of between Madison and Milwaukee that you see up on the map here. And that'll be utility scale solar that will be added to diversify our energy mix. In addition to some of the solar that we have that's more utility, we call it utility scale because it's large. There's also what's called distributed energy resources. Those are smaller resources, whether it's rooftop or individual consumers. And what this graph shows you is the growth in distributed energy resources. So that's the kind of resources that members like you could have, or neighbors. So you can see from 2017, we had 18 different members throughout the whole Dairyland system. This is 625,000 members today growing to the 2,000. And then the number that you see on the top, it tells you how many installations per year. So it's growing at over 200 a year. This relates directly to my one comment that I said, what's changing significantly? And that's flat loads, because when members supply it themselves, obviously we're not supplying it. And then 2, affordable alternatives. So those are game changers in our industry. And lots of challenges with interconnections, the safety for our line crews. So this is changing the face. But I wanted you to see the growth and some of the things that are happening that we watch for in our diversification. And then we've also looked at wind. We have a purchase power agreement for 98 megawatts, and that's right in southwest Wisconsin, in one of our, adjacent to one of our member cooperatives. And that'll be a 20-year PPA, and there's about 49 towers, wind towers, that supply that. And for our efforts in wind, we were acknowledged by one of our statewide environmental groups for our work in wind and solar. So that was a great recognition for the entire Dairyland family. In order to sustain the wind and the solar, we are also partnering in building a renewable enabling natural gas combined cycle facility. And this is going to be right up in Superior, Wisconsin, so about 2.5 hours just north of you. I know many of you are familiar with that area. Let me tell you a little bit about this facility. It'll be up to 600 megawatts is what we've requested in our, we call our request to the Public Service Commission, our CPCN process. It will be a partnership 50-50 between ourselves and Minnesota Power. That's a subsidiary of Elite Energy, an investor-owned that's headquartered right in Duluth, Minnesota. And it will, after construction, have about 30 employees, and it will be able to ramp up and ramp down to support it. So let me show you a picture of that, because folks ask, why do you need natural gas? We're hearing that we can have 100% renewables. Why would you build a natural gas facility? And this is why. And my next couple of slides are going to explain to you why reliability is core of what I've done in my entire career. I think it's core to what they work at daily here for you at Jump River. And so this first slide shows you how their energy resources, I'm trying to show it we tried to make a slide that makes it really easy for reporters to understand. No offense to present company. But where we have our base load resources that run, and then we have what we call intermittent resources. And what that just means is it's solar and wind and those things, like when the sun doesn't shine, solar energy isn't there, and when the wind doesn't blow, wind isn't there. So and those ramp up and down. The sun comes on, everything, single solar panel comes on at the same time. A cloud comes by, it goes down. So you get voltage issues, whether it's on your distribution system and certainly on your transmission system and back at your plants. Maybe more detail than you want to know, but you want to make sure we're taking care of that. And then we have the energy market, demand response, which is that load response that you heard Jim talk about, and then energy efficiency, which sort of just cuts down on the absolute need of energy. So we want to make sure we're there when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. And that's a way to just show you what a combined cycle gas does and explain what intermittent resources are, in case you read that in the newspaper. So again, why do we care about reliability? Why am I taking the time to talk about that? Well, I love this global picture here from the polar vortex that we all just went through. And I love this because if you see the purple, you can see that it was as cold here in the upper Midwest as it was in the North Pole. And I grew up in Phoenix, and it's hard for people to understand how cold it can get right here. So during that time frame, I'm going to show you some slides here that engineering gave me, and we tried to make them pretty. But you'll notice along the axis, going up and down, the vertical axis, there's some slashes, so it shows you how the numbers change on you. But what we're trying to show is as load is getting very high, as it goes up, as it's getting very cold on the polar vortex day, and then wind, the green line that you see kind of like the green mountain, as it gets colder, the wind comes off almost immediately. What happened when it's that cold, the wind towers are not rated for that extreme temperature. So they came off, they dropped about 80% overnight. Now some folks say, well, you could have batteries to do that, but batteries generally only last right now 2 hours. So someday, again, when the Jetsons ages comes, we'll have batteries that last 8 hours or 10 or more. So we're watching that technology, but this is what happens on the very cold days. And at the same time in Minnesota, there were constraints of natural gas. So your Dairyland staff at your power plants, our power plants, were babysitting the equipment, because those of you who've worked around heavy equipment know that when it's cold, they're very, very tested. Now this happens also on hot days. It doesn't get real hot and sticky here, but in the southern part of our territory it does. So at 95-degree days you can see kind of the same thing. When it's hot and humid, the wind doesn't blow. It's just at the very time when our load is higher. So that's what I wanted to show you about our diversification. So we have more solar for our membership, we have wind, we're going to be putting in a natural gas unit, our coal's still running reliable, we're looking at the reasonable future of that. They're getting very old. Our Elmo site will be 50 this year, so we'll be looking at the future of coal very hard over the next couple of years. So I'd like to move on to what are we doing then with the older facilities. I think many of you know that we had a 50 megawatt boiling water reactor in La Crosse. That has not operated since 1987. We bought it for $1 from the Atomic Energy Commission. That's before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. In 1967, $1. Then we had to create a trust fund, all of our members, $92 million. That dollar grew to $92 million decommissioning trust fund. We are using the dollars that were in the trust fund. I'm telling you this for a reason. Remember, I said we were 1.4 billion now versus 1.5 billion, because that asset that we had, our nuclear decommissioning trust fund, which was put aside to decommission our nuclear plant, we are spending that now to decommission. And you can see here up on the screen how the containment building, so that dome type shape, has come down. The stack has come down, and that should be completed, all things going well, by the end of this year, 2019, early 2020. And then the LAC bar, again, our La Crosse boiling water reactor nuclear site, will just be all a level and a brownfield site. And then we can decide what to do with that, which is right at our one of our coal facilities. So 95% complete, going well, safety very well, and that is where the proceeds or the dollars from our members-funded nuclear decommissioning trust fund went. And we still will have spent fuel on site, so you'll keep hearing about the spent fuel in the future. And then we had the Alma site that we worked on decommissioning. And the one last thing that we had, you can see kind of the administrative building coming down in a series of pictures. And then there's a 700-foot stack. It had to be that high so that it could, the emissions from the plant could get over the bluff. So what I want to show you now, and these are the last two things I have for you, I want to show you how to take a stack down, and the things that your G&T works on. You'll see, we spent close to 4 years planning for taking the stack down. I'm going to show you the wrong way to do it, and then I'm going to show you the Dairyland way, our co-op family way to do things. I'm going to show you the first film the wrong way, but I want to let you know there are safety things I would never do, but no one got hurt. Okay, so let's see if we can rock and roll this video. So Denise, I'm going to let you drive to bring up the video. So we got a couple of videos. We'll show you how stacks come down at power plants. I want to make sure that works good for you. Thought it might be fun to end my presentation with something really interesting, because they say leave them laughing. This, you'll laugh, but it's not funny, because it is just not the way to take down a stack. And you can go on YouTube, they have all kinds of demolitions. And we did, actually, the folks who are taking down the Dairyland one, actually take down buildings in Las Vegas, New York, the big skyscrapers, you know, that you see them come down, so. This is the wrong way. And we have transmission lines by ours at Alma. There's also the river and a highway. And the line crew knows, transmission conductor under tension, loose like that, if that hit you, I mean, cables are like that, they're very big. All right, so now this is Dairyland Way. That would have been my worst nightmare. Right, Niles is too.
Here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
The project manager told me this fell within like 12 inches of where it needed to go. And then at the base, it was still, you know, a couple of feet off, but just really just right exactly. I mean, they had to go between the river, the road, the transmission towers, and then you can see the plant, you know, is there. So really a lot of planning. We had Coast Guard there, we had the patrol there, traffic closed. All right, you can advance it. I could watch these all day. I'm sure you guys probably don't want to, but that's what we need to do. John will tell you more. John Carl will even tell you more for those of you who come to our annual meeting. Tell you more about the stack. So what I'd like to do is just end with a slide, which is our mission. You can see it's very similar to your mission. We're here to empower our communities and provide the power that lights our hospitals, that keeps life support equipment, heat, and the things that we need to keep us alive. And it is my honor and privilege to serve as the CEO of Dairyland Power, and I will be around for question and answer for anyone who desires. So Jim, thanks for asking me. Glad I can make it this year.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I very much appreciate it. Jerry?
Next item on the agenda is comments and questions for any of the reports that you just heard. And that would be from myself, Attorney Berman, Jim Anderson, Lori Davis, Linda Powers, or our auditor. We need a microphone coming behind you.
Thank you. I really have to congratulate the co-op for its proactive thinking in updating its operating systems and billing systems and stuff. And from what I understand, we're going to be having to get a new account number. With that account number, and also in dealing with the billing portal, we'll have to reestablish the account within the billing portal. After the transition of information to the new billing portal, what's going to happen to the information that Bill4U has? Was that third-party software, or was that just software that was managed by the co-op?
We're going to let our billing clerk, Sebastian, take this one because he has been working directly with them on this and trying to make this transition as smooth as we can. So, Sebastian.
All right, so Bill for You is our third-party software that you run your credit cards through. But they don't actually store the credit cards. That's all ran through Heartland Payments, which is a nationwide company. They have all the security in place for that type of stuff. That's all going to go away. So we're not transferring that. We're not moving that over. It would be, deleted once we're done with them. Does that answer your question?
They're deleting it?
Yes, we don't have the information to delete, so we don't actually store credit card information at all.
Is SmartHub also a third-party software?
That is yeah, it is a third-party software, but that's through our new billing system. They do it all together.
Okay.
So they're one and the same company.
So, but they'll be storing our new information that we provide.
Correct. They would,
Yes.
yes.
That's really secure as far as you guys?
Yeah, and that's secure, and they have 400 or 500 co-ops, I believe, maybe more across the country, and they do the same thing for all of them.
Thank you for the question. Is there any others?
With the new system that you're talking about bringing online, will you have the ability, Sebastian, to pay your bill directly from your checking account without a fee?
Yes, you can pay with a checking account through our phone system. We'll have an automated phone system. I know that was a big concern as people couldn't pay over the phone. So with the new system, you will be able to pay over the phone with a checking or credit or debit card, as well as on our SmartHub website or the SmartHub app on your phone if you have like a smartphone or a tablet. No fees, no fees.
Thank you. I have one other question. Will the membership of the cooperative have the ability to look at the new building plans and what's proposed and the costs, and then react with our members that we have, our representatives here, before it's voted on?
The vote is going to take place on Monday. So their plan is at the office, at the Jump River office. And Jim, if you want to comment to how would they possibly look at that beforehand? Is it in the video at all?
They could go back and look at the videos. We do have copies of the plans available that were bidding documents that were made available to the public to look at during the period of time that it was released from the building exchange from Linda. So they are still there to look at. The bids are out, they've been brought back in, so as far as awarding the bids, that'll be done through the board. But the membership can look at the bids, or the project, look at the plans, and once the bids are released, if we do move forward, we'll make public who the successful bidders were.
This is just the first time as a member that we're seeing the new building, and that's why I was asking if there's a period of time that the membership can digest all that and then respond to the board of directors. But I guess there isn't much time between now and Monday.
Well, that's one of those time-sensitive things that we did. We brought forward last September the possibility. We certainly could not come forward to the membership before we sent it out to the bidders. So that was done by April 18th, I think, was the deadline. And then it took until this week until we got that back. Thank you. Question back here, Mr. Hecker.
Jerry, I keep hearing that the rates aren't going to be going up. I'd like to know where you're going to get this money from to pay for this, because it isn't going to happen for nothing. So obviously, the co-op has money to pay for this, which could have been used to keep our rates a little lower. Can you comment on where it's coming from?
I will let Mr. our general manager. He's going to give it to Lori Davis. Go ahead, Lori.
We will be securing a loan through one of our bankers, and that loan will be amortized for up to 35 years. So for the next 35 years, the cooperative's members will help to contribute to paying for that building.
At what interest rate are you going to secure this loan?
Well, they're kind of all over the board. It'll depend on, they change every day, and they change anywhere from about 3% to 4 point something, depending on the terms and where we get the money. Yeah, we do have a building contingency fund that's already been set aside, and we do have $2 million in that fund already to put towards the cost of this building.
So that $2 million is money that was put there
Yes.
instead of keeping the rates lower. Is that correct?
No.
And how was it put there?
That money was money that we drew down in loan funds to help put, to build our previous projects. It's a reimbursement of previous projects that we paid cash for. That was obtained through RUS.
Is there any other questions? Stanley in the back.
What's the approximate cost?
So right now, we are just a few dollars under 6 million. We're carrying a contingency fund that puts us at like 6.018 million for the project.
Okay, I have a couple questions. First, just as a point of interest, what's the acreage on that facility site currently? I was surprised to know that there's enough space to leave the existing buildings, build the new space. So it's just a point of interest what the current acreage.
I think it's approximately 7 acres.
Okay. The general contractors who are up for bid, is that up for public information yet?
No, those bids have not been reviewed yet and have not been presented to the board. Yes.
Okay. And I would put a request in. There are many contractors, of course, that are members, and I would hope that we utilize on this project as many local contractors as possible. I know that the general contractor would be responsible for that, but I also know the cooperative can put a request into the general contractor to use as many local contractors in the small piece parts.
Yes, and those bids have already been received. We advertised it, it was in your local publication, it was on your website. So any local contractors were made aware of the project, and we've received bids from all interested parties at this point, and those will be reviewed pending board action. So, and we do have some local bids.
Okay, great, thank you.
Stanley has another question.
This must be an awful, beautiful, big building, because the one in Hayward only was about 2 million. And we had to buy the land and all the rest of it. We got a nice place up there. What kind of Taj Mahal are we building for 6 million?
I was not involved with the Hayward project, but I know that is significantly smaller. And I also know that one came in at a higher dollar per square foot cost. That one was about $175 a square foot, and that was a couple years ago now. So this is not a Taj Mahal by any stretch. It's a very efficient and very high quality, but not anything over the top by any stretch.
I think you overstated at 1.676 because that also we had a 120 by 108 building that cost us $1 million for dry up, so that was included in there. I shouldn't say $1 million because it was 100,000. I don't remember. But we got a building which should have been in this cost, but we bid it separately because I thought we'd get better bid by separately those two. So when you say 176, it's not the right cost. because if you had that other cost of the drive,
All right, I was not involved with that project, that was just a number that was told to me.
One thing too, when the board came forth on this project, and as we started to go forward, we made it very clear we're not building what the Hayward structure is. The Hayward structure went over the top in some areas. This area is put together very practical. We're not going to go with exposed wood beams. We're not going to do things that take up space or unnecessary use of space. Everything's been put together at the lowest possible cost, and by using the correct materials that we felt will give longevity to the life of the building.
Ann?
Could the general manager explain how we're going to spend $6 million and our rates are not going to go up? How that's going to be handled, please?
Yeah, so it's going to be just like you saw this year with what came back to you through the power cost adjustment and sales. As we become more effective in the management of the co-op, using the technology that we can, and operate the co-op efficiently. You know, a side note, our co-op should have 6 more employees. If you look at the national average of co-ops in the state, we're operating under 6 of where we should be. But we can do that with the technology in place and with the improvements that we're making. As we effectively manage that co-op or Jump Rivers co-op and keep our cost as stable as possible, we can absorb the cost of the building as we move forward over that 35-year period.
I wondered if you're going to have an extra space, like what Hayward has, that you would be getting rent paid on?
There's no planned rental spots in this building.
Tony Arts, Tony, I would like to know if we're going to get the $10,000 rock sign moved to Ladysmith.
I don't think there's a plan for that.
During one of the presentations, there was, someone alluded to demand side management programs, energy conservation programs, or electricity conservation. Do you have any plans to put those in effect? And if you do, whether it's from Dairyland or from Jump River to us, will there be incentives attached?
I guess I'll take that one. So yes, we are planning on putting some incentives together. One of the big things with the voltage demand system that we're talking about, that's going to be system-wide, the benefit will be on all members. So there really won't be a rebate back to the member on that, but we're going to see rate stabilization where we can control that peak so we can control future spikes in our energy cost. And that's something we're very well aware of. That's something all co-ops and small co-ops are working on. There are some other small programs that we're going to still have in place, and if you could feel free to reach out to the co-op and we can help direct you to those.
I have one question, dovetailing that. Will any of the programs you have anything, I want to word this properly, have involuntary shut-offs at peak times? Meaning like, will the members only be able to opt into that?
No, and so this is one thing about voltage control that's different than a peak demand control that you're into. When we do voltage control, we can actually lower the voltage down using an algorithm that we've developed in a software program. So it can anticipate a spike coming on and it'll actually start to lower the demand peak down. When it works correctly, and I'm assuming that we're going to be able to make that work correctly, and I shouldn't use assume, this project that we're doing, the software is seamless. You won't see it at home. It's something that we'll be able to control with Dairyland to help lower that down as we come forward on the peak. So it should be seamless for you guys.
Question way in the back.
While they're asking the question, I'll just add, the Dairyland system in our load management program, we can control 80 megawatts of load on a 1,000 megawatt system. So that's the collective of working with all of our distribution co-ops.
What's the average office space going to be in this new building?
From a size standpoint, it's approximately 150 square feet per person.
Is there any other questions?
Yeah, Jerry, I got one for the gal from Dairyland. I was recently told that your solar systems, once the temperature passes 70 degrees, they start decreasing in efficiency. Is that correct?
Well, I have had some of our technical folks say that when it gets to that kind of temperature, there can be some degradation in the capacity factors, but it still gives off some solar. I don't know the exact amounts, but I can get that to you.
No, as the temperature goes up, the efficiency decreases considerably. Whereas here in Wisconsin, the temperature doesn't change all that much, and it's 70 degrees would be almost run-of-the-mill temperature for us here during the summer. And we would probably be more efficient for solar than the southern states would be. Is that correct?
Well, the efficiency of the solar depends on the panels, but we have found that solar does work here in Wisconsin. And we've used tracking panels though. And some of it's are the terrain that we have. We have to find the right terrain, right facing, make sure that there aren't trees in the way. You know, if you're in the desert, you got just miles, actually, hundreds of miles. But I don't know that we'll ever see quite the solar farms yet because our land properties are so valuable for the farm, or it can be costly to prepare them for the, want to flatten your forests to put in solar panels. Some of it has to do with our terrain. So did I answer your question or get to your point?
No, I was thinking more or less if individuals put their own solar panels in, if they would be more efficient here. And then let's say if you put them in down in New Mexico or someplace like that.
Well, the one thing about individuals putting in, it's not as cost effective because you don't get the economies of scale that you get with utility scale solar. And that's why we found, I showed you the 18 sites that we have. We were able to do it between 0.5 megawatt and 2.5 megawatt, where if you did just panels on your roof and used it just for your rooftop, you'd be looking at the usage that you have in a residential home might be, 1,500 kilowatts, maybe? Yeah, 1,500 kilowatts, and so it's a huge difference in economics because of the economies of scale.
Bob Bringston.
On the new generation, you're talking about the gas plant up at, I would presume, Midway by Superior. Is there an intention to, in time, hook that up to Manitoba Hydro? Because Manitoba Hydro is in the process now of 7 or 9 new power plants on the Nelson River. And they just completed, I can't remember the name of it, but the one they just put online is 4,400 megawatt, or 400,000 homes. Is there an intent, some kind of an intention down the line to be using Manitoba Hydro's energy?
Right, so there are two questions in there. One was on the Nemadji Trail Energy Center, which is in Superior. It's right on the Nemadji River, not too far from Lake Superior. That will be interconnected with the, and I think folks here are familiar with the Weston to Arrowhead transmission line. That's about 6 miles away, so it'll be interconnected with that. And then you asked about Manitoba Hydro, which is up in Canada, and that's connected to the United States via long distance, what we call DC or direct current transmission lines. And not here at Dairyland, but back in my old life, we did look at contracts for that Manitoba Hydro, and it's very costly because you have a long-term capital investment. So, and it hasn't been completed, they were kind of sold out, and then you need to buy the transmission to get it to the United States, and it comes in, well, and then it's all in the, we call the MISO, the Midwest Independent System Operator. So the short answer to your question on Manitoba Hydro, we're kind of thinking that someday maybe we'll get a purchase power agreement or request. We don't need that right now. All the signals I've gotten is a little bit pricey, and we don't have the capacity need, so we're going to do our wind first, and then later, as we need more, we'll be open to all options, whether it's hydro from there, hydro from somebody else, purchase power agreements elsewhere.
Well, XL already gets their energy from there.
They do buy some of their
Yes,
power
they
from, yes, and so does Elite, and so does my old company. It's just, we've not entered into contracts because it just didn't work for us.
Stanley's got another question, and as they're passing it back, I need to mention the fact that Jump River's rates are the lowest of all the surrounding cooperatives except for Barron. Their manager's been here longer. When ours gets its feet on the ground, man, we're gonna be competitive. Go ahead, Stanley.
I just want to mention that I'm not against the building, because I think that building we need very effectively. Because if you take the people that work there and you think of about a 4x4 space, it seems like we've been training in there now, getting all the people that are 4x4, and you really need something that works with, and everything's going to improve in their workmanship building. And it was just the cost that I was questioning about. And if you don't want to cross the street, your retrofit would have probably been more than the $6 million, and you would have had an antique building to start with, which will never work. So I want to congratulate you on starting where you are. That's my final statement.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions? If there are no other questions, we'll go to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Any unfinished business? Is there any new business? Is there any new business? We're ready for the election results.
Arian Knops was elected chair of the election inspectors, but in the interest of time, he asked me to report the results, and they are as follows. In District 2, Myron Brooks received 203 votes and is re-elected. In District 7, Jason Weaver received 128 votes. Lori Taguma received 100 votes. Jason is elected in that district. And in District 8, Walter Crook received 195 votes and is re-elected. Let me also mention to you that in all cases, every ballot was counted twice, and in some cases by two different election inspectors. And in some cases, the ballots were, if they didn't agree, the ballots were counted a third time to make sure there was agreement. On the proposed bylaw amendment, 188 votes were in favor of adoption, 24 votes against. The bylaw amendment is approved. And on the advisory resolution, there were 89 votes for adoption, 128 votes against adoption. That resolution failed. I want to thank everybody who makes this process, important process, work. The candidates, win or lose, the petition signers who got these names on the ballot, the election inspectors, and most importantly, all of you who voted, whether by mail or here in person today. Lori, I know that the board and members of the co-op appreciate all of your contributions during your service on the board. One more point before I hand the mic back to Jerry. It's been our practice to retain the ballots for a period of 30 days and then to destroy them. And we will follow that practice unless you give us a different direction this morning. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Niles. And I reiterate, Niles, thank you to Lori Taguma. And I encourage all of you to take your turn and run for the board and participate in your cooperative. We'll have Jim do the prize drawings.
Before we get to the prize drawing, just a quick announcement. You got a ticket stub when you checked in. We want to make sure that you use that stub and get your gift as you exit today. We've got a couple of door prize gifts we're giving away. So make sure you do that. You'll also get a dinner ticket when you leave here for JNS Supper Club. You need to have that ticket with you. If there's 2 in your party, you need to make sure we've got 2 with you when you go. You need to be out to the JNS Supper Club by 2 o'clock. It's east of here. It's west of here. I've turned around, it's been a long day. So it's west of here, JNS, the old Club 8 for you old timers that have been around here that I refer to that now as Club 8 and I confuse people. So it's good for today only, but please be there before 2 o'clock so we can get that handled. Niles, do you want to go over the...
Yeah, as far as the prize drawings, consistent with past practice, you must be present to win. If your name's drawn, please come to the front to collect the prize. And note that directors and employees who have accounts or are part of joint accounts on co-op lines are not eligible for the drawings. So that's so for the both for the 7 $100 credit awards and also for the grand prize drawing of a $500 credit towards your account. Did I cover it all, Jim? Good.
Or, we borrow you.
Got to take my glasses off to read this. Gary, is it Purgett? Gary, are you here?
Saw him here. He was just here.
Oh, that was an expensive early departure.
That's for the $500 one?
That was one.
One. Well, I'll tell him 500. He'll like that.
Donald and Dorothy Stevens. There we go. Congratulations.
Everybody should follow that example of being excited.
Richard and Donna Gilbertson. Also here. Michelle Sir.
Nope. Okay.
Jackson Reeder.
He's back right.
Got paid for his work counting ballots. And Florence Solanke, another one of our election inspectors.
Over here.
That was unplanned. Thomas and Susan Van Doren.
Coming behind you, Don.
Kenneth Winger in the back. So that's all 7 of the 100. So we've drawn the 7 100. Yeah, this is the 5. Wayne and Betty, is it Blumentine? Wayne and Betty Blumentine. Is that on the aisle? And that's it. Jerry?
Thank you. Okay, I need to remind you all that your board's #1 goal is long-term rate stabilization. And hopefully next year when you come here, you're going to be surprised even more than you are today. Thank you. We're going to adjourn the meeting. We hope to see you all at Club 8. We won't have a board meeting right after this meeting, so all of your board will be there and hopefully you can interact with them. Thanks for coming.
Adjourned by unanimous consent of 12:55.